Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Horizon and looked out at the stars. The ship was small compared to the alien vessels he had seen, but it was home to him and his crew. They had been traveling for 3 months now, moving further away from human space than anyone had gone before. Dr. Lisa Kane walked up beside him. She was the ship's science officer and one of the smartest people Jake had ever met. Her dark hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, and her eyes were bright with excitement. "The readings are getting stronger," she said, holding up her tablet. "Whatever is out there, it's big, really big." Jake nodded. They were chasing strange energy signals that their deep space sensors had picked up. The signals came from beyond the edge of known space, in an area that most aliens called the dead zone. Nothing was supposed to live out there. Nothing was supposed to survive. Lieutenant Ben Carter turned around from his position at the navigation controls. He was young, maybe 25, with sandy brown hair and quick hands. "Sir, we're getting close to the border. The Zephyrians won't be happy if we cross into the dead zone." The Zephyrians were the rulers of this part of space. They were tall, blue-skinned aliens with crystal-like growths on their heads. They could move things with their minds and had technology that humans could barely understand. Most importantly, they thought humans were weak and stupid. "Let them be unhappy," Jake said. "We're not breaking any laws. The dead zone doesn't belong to anyone." Lisa looked at her readings again. "Jake, I'm seeing something I've never seen before. The energy patterns don't match anything in our database. They don't match anything in the Zephyrian database either." That was saying something. The Zephyrians had been exploring space for thousands of years. If they had never seen these energy patterns, then whatever was out there was truly unknown. The bridge was quiet, except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. The Horizon had a crew of 50 people, all volunteers who wanted to push the boundaries of human exploration. They were scientists, engineers, and soldiers who believed that humanity needed to learn more about the universe around them. "Sir," came a voice from the communications station. It was Ensign Mary Watson, a redhead from Earth's moon colonies. "I'm getting a message from Admiral Alex Stone." Jake sighed. Admiral Stone was the commander of the human fleet, and he worried about everything. "Put him through." The main screen flickered, and Admiral Stone's weathered face appeared. He was in his 60s, with gray hair and tired eyes. Behind him, Jake could see the busy bridge of the flagship. "Morrison, what the hell do you think you're doing out there?" Stone's voice was rough with anger. "Following our mission orders, sir. We're investigating unknown energy signatures. Your mission orders didn't include starting a war with the Zep. I just got a very angry call from Admiral Zixathora. She says you're planning to enter the dead zone." Jake had met Zixara once before. She was a typical Zephyrian officer, proud and looking down on humans like they were children playing with toys. Her crystal crown had been especially large, showing her high rank. "The dead zone is neutral space, Admiral. We have every right to explore it." Stone rubbed his forehead. "Jake, listen to me. The Zephyrians have been warning everyone about that area for centuries. Ships go in and never come out. Even their most advanced vessels won't go near it." "Maybe that's exactly why we need to go," Lisa said, stepping closer to the screen. "Admiral, the energy readings we're detecting could change everything we know about physics. This could be the discovery that puts humanity on the same level as the Zephyrians." Stone looked at her for a long moment. "Dr. Kane, I respect your opinion, but I can't risk an entire ship and crew on a maybe." "Sir," Jake said, "with respect, this is why we're out here. Humans have always been explorers. We didn't get to the stars by playing it safe." Ben Carter looked up from his station. "Sir, I'm detecting something new. The energy source just got a lot stronger." Lisa ran to her science station and began typing quickly. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Jake, you need to see this." The main screen changed to show a swirling mass of energy in space. It looked like a storm made of light, with colors that seemed to shift and move in ways that hurt to look at. The storm was huge, probably bigger than Earth's moon. "What is that?" Stone asked from the screen. "I don't know," Lisa said honestly, "but it's not natural. The energy patterns are too organized, too, intelligent." Jake stared at the swirling light. Something deep inside him told him that this was important. This was the kind of discovery that came along once in 1,000 years. "Admiral," he said, not taking his eyes off the energy storm, "I'm going to continue the mission. Morrison, that's an order. Turn around and come home." Jake looked at his crew. He saw excitement in their eyes, not fear. These people had volunteered to push the boundaries of human knowledge. They hadn't come this far to turn back now. "I'm sorry, sir. I'm going to have to refuse that order." Stone's face turned red. "Jake, if you do this, you're on your own. I can't send help if something goes wrong." "I understand, sir." The connection ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Jake looked around at his crew. No one had moved to their stations to turn the ship around. "Well," he said, "I guess we're really doing this." Lisa was already back at her station, studying the energy storm. "Jake, I'm picking up some kind of pattern in the energy. It's almost like it's calling to us." "Calling to us how?" "I can't explain it, but the patterns match human brainwaves. It's like whatever is in there recognizes us." Ben Carter turned from his navigation station. "Sir, should I set course?" "For the energy storm." Jake took a deep breath. He thought about Admiral Stone's warnings. He thought about the Zephyrians and their fear of the dead zone. He thought about all the ships that had disappeared in this area of space. Then he thought about humanity's future, about the chance to discover something that could change everything. "Set course for the storm, Ben. Full speed ahead." The USS Horizon turned toward the swirling mass of impossible energy and began to accelerate. Behind them, the last outpost of civilization grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared completely. They were alone in the dark, heading toward something that defied all understanding. None of them knew that they were about to discover the secret that would change the fate of every living being in the galaxy. 43 years had passed since the USS Horizon disappeared into the dead zone. The galaxy had moved on, and most people had forgotten about the small human ship that had vanished while chasing impossible dreams. Captain Amy Walsh sat in her command chair aboard the Zephyrian patrol ship Starlight. She was human, but she worked for the Zephyrian Empire, like many of her people did. It was the only way to get access to advanced technology and travel beyond the small cluster of worlds that humanity called home. Amy had brown hair cut short, in military style, and green eyes that missed nothing. She had worked hard to earn the respect of her alien crew, and now she commanded one of the border patrol ships that watched the edge of civilized space. "Captain," called out Navigation Officer Kethron, a young Zephyrian with bright blue skin and small crystal growths on his forehead. "I'm picking up something strange on long-range sensors." Amy turned to look at him, to find strange. "There's a ship approaching from the dead zone, but that's impossible. Nothing comes out of the dead zone." Amy stood up and walked to the sensor station. The screen showed a small dot moving toward them at incredible speed. "What kind of ship?" "That's the strange part, Captain. The computer says it's human, but the energy readings don't match anything in our database." Amy felt a cold chill run down her spine. "Human, are you sure?" "Yes, Captain. The ship's design matches old human exploration vessels from the 2380s. Amy knew her history. Only one human ship from that era had ever entered the dead zone. "Computer, search for USS Horizon." The ship's computer spoke in its calm, electronic voice. "USS Horizon, human exploration vessel, disappeared in the dead zone 43 years ago. All hands presumed lost." The bridge fell silent. Amy's Zephyrian crew looked at each other with confusion and fear. Ships didn't come back from the dead zone. Everyone knew that. Captain Catherine said quietly, "Should I contact High Command?" Amy nodded. "Send a priority message to High Archon Veltar immediately. Tell him we have a situation." High Archon Veltar was the supreme leader of the Zephyrian Empire. He was old, even for a Zephyrian, with a crystal crown that reached nearly to the ceiling. He ruled from the capital world of Zephyros, where the greatest minds in the galaxy tried to unlock the secrets of the universe. While they waited for a response, Amy watched the approaching ship grow larger on her screens. It was definitely the Horizon, but something was wrong with it. The hull seemed to glow with a soft light that didn't come from any engine she knew. Strange patterns of energy flowed around the ship like water. "Captain," came a new voice from the communications station. It was Lieutenant Jackstar, another young Zephyrian. "We're receiving a transmission from the approaching vessel. Put it through." The main screen flickered, and suddenly Amy was looking at a human face she recognized from history books. Commander Jake Morrison looked exactly the same as he had 43 years ago. He hadn't aged a single day. "This is Commander Jake Morrison of the USS Horizon, requesting permission to approach your vessel." Amy's mouth fell open. She had studied the Horizon's disappearance in military academy. Morrison should be dead, or at least an old man by now. "Commander Morrison," she said carefully, "this is Captain Amy Walsh of the Zephyrian patrol ship Starlight. According to our records, your ship disappeared 43 years ago." Morrison smiled, and there was something different about his eyes. They seemed to hold depths that weren't there before. "Time works differently where we've been, Captain. We need to return to human space immediately. We have important information to share." Before Amy could respond, her communication board lit up with an incoming message from High Command. High Archon Veltar's face appeared on a side screen. "Captain Walsh, what is your status?" "High Archon, we have the USS Horizon requesting passage to human space. The ship that disappeared 43 years ago." Veltar's crystal crown glowed brighter, which Amy knew meant he was excited or upset. "That's impossible. Scan the vessel immediately." Amy nodded to her science officer, a quiet Zephyrian named Lindar. Full sensor sweep of the human vessel. Lindar's hands moved quickly over his controls. After a moment, he looked up with confusion and fear on his blue face. "High Archon, the readings don't make sense. The ship is generating energy levels that should be impossible. The hull appears to be made of materials that don't exist in our database." "Impossible," Veltar said. "No human technology could achieve such readings." On the main screen, Morrison waited patiently. He seemed to know exactly what they were discussing. "High Archon," Amy said, "what are your orders?" Veltar was quiet for a long moment. Amy could see him thinking, trying to understand how a primitive human ship could return from the dead zone with impossible technology. "Escort them to Station Alpha 7, he finally said. "Do not let them out of your sight. I'm sending Science Minister Catherine to meet them." Amy knew Catherine by reputation. He was one of the most brilliant scientists in the Empire, but he was also known for looking down on other species. He believed that Zephyrians were naturally superior to all other forms of life. "Understood, High Archon." The transmission ended, and Amy turned back to Morrison on the main screen. "Commander, you're cleared to proceed to Station Alpha 7. We'll escort you there." "Thank you, Captain. We appreciate your cooperation." As the Horizon moved closer, Amy got a better look at the ship. It was definitely the same vessel that had disappeared decades ago, but it had been transformed. The hull seemed to bend light around it, creating strange visual effects. Energy patterns danced across the surface like living things. "Captain," Lindar said quietly, "I'm detecting something else. The ship isn't just generating impossible energy levels, it's also scanning us." "Scanning us how? I don't know. It's using scanning methods I've never seen before. It's like they're reading our minds." Amy felt another chill. The Zephyrians were the only species known to have psychic abilities. How could humans have developed something similar? The journey to Station Alpha 7 took 6 hours. During that time, Amy tried to contact the Horizon several more times, but Morrison politely refused to answer any questions about where they had been or what had happened to them. When they finally reached the station, Amy was surprised to see that a full fleet had assembled. Dozens of Zephyrian ships surrounded the small research station, all of them with weapons ready. Science Minister Catherine was waiting on the station when they docked. He was tall, even for a Zephyrian, with a crystal crown that marked him as one of the highest-ranking scientists in the Empire. His skin was a deeper blue than most, showing his age and wisdom. Amy watched on the security cameras as Morrison and two of those crew members walked through the docking tube. One was a woman with dark hair, who Amy recognized as Dr. Lisa Kane, the Horizon's science officer. The other was a young man she didn't recognize. What struck Amy immediately was how calm they seemed. They weren't acting like people who had been lost in space for 43 years. They moved with confidence and purpose, like they knew exactly what they were doing. The meeting took place in the station's main conference room. Amy was allowed to watch from the security center, along with several Zephyrian military officers. Catherine looked down at the three humans with obvious disdain. So, the lost children have finally returned home. Tell me, how did primitive human technology allow you to survive in the dead zone? Morrison smiled that same strange smile. Minister Catherine, we didn't just survive. We learned, we grew, we discovered things about the universe that will change everything. Impossible, Catherine said. Human minds are too simple to understand advanced concepts. Dr. Kane stepped forward. Minister, would you like me to solve the unified field theory that your scientists have been working on for the past 2 centuries? The room fell silent. The unified field theory was the holy grail of Zephyrian science. No one had ever come close to solving it. You're bluffing, Catherine said. Lisa Kane walked to the room's computer terminal and began typing. Mathematical equations filled the screen, more complex than anything Amy had ever seen. The equations seemed to flow like music, each part connecting to the next in perfect harmony. Catherine's crystal crown began to glow brighter and brighter as he read the equations. His blue skin turned pale. This is correct, he whispered. How did you? Morrison stood up. Minister, humanity has been given a gift. We've learned things that will benefit all species in the galaxy. But first, we need to return home. Amy watched as the most brilliant scientist in the Zephyrian Empire stared at the equations on the screen, his entire worldview crumbling around him. For the first time in their history, humans had shown knowledge that exceeded Zephyrian understanding, and this was just the beginning. Ambassador Tom Phillips arrived at Station Alpha 7, 12 hours after the Horizon crew had demonstrated their impossible knowledge. Tom was a short, stocky man with gray hair and kind eyes. He had spent 20 years trying to improve relations between humans and the Zephyrian Empire, usually with little success. The station was buzzing with activity. Zephyrian scientists were running back and forth, trying to understand the equations that Dr. Kane had written. Military officers were having heated discussions about what this meant for the balance of power in the galaxy. Tom found Science Minister Catherine in the station's main laboratory, staring at a wall covered with mathematical formulas. The tall Zephyrian looked like he hadn't slept since the humans arrived. Minister, Tom said politely, I've been sent to facilitate discussions between our peoples. Catherine turned around slowly. His crystal crown was dim, which Tom knew meant he was exhausted or confused. Ambassador Phillips, your people have created quite a situation. How so? These equations, Catherine pointed at the wall. They solve problems we've been working on for centuries. But more than that, they suggest technologies that should be impossible. Tom looked at the complex mathematics covering the wall. He couldn't understand any of it, but he could see that it had shaken the Zephyrian scientist to his core. May I speak with Commander Morrison and his crew? Catherine nodded toward a door. They're in conference room 3. But I warn you, Ambassador, they're not the same people who left human space 43 years ago. Tom walked through the door and found himself face to face with 3 humans who looked exactly as they had when they disappeared. Morrison sat calmly at the conference table, with Dr. Kane and Lieutenant Ben Carter beside him. "Commander Morrison," Tom said, sitting down across from them. "I'm Ambassador Phillips. I've been asked to help with this situation." Morrison smiled, and Tom immediately understood what Catherine meant. There was something different about these people. They seemed to know things that others didn't, like they could see connections that weren't visible to normal eyes. "Ambassador, it's good to meet you. We've been waiting for someone from human leadership to arrive." "Commander, I have to ask the obvious question. Where have you been for 43 years? And how is it that none of you have aged?" Dr. Kane leaned forward. "We encountered something in the dead zone. Beings of pure energy, who exist outside normal space and time. They called themselves the Architects." "Architects of what?" "Reality itself," Morrison said simply. "They showed us that the universe is much different than anyone imagines. Space, time, matter, energy, these are just tools that can be shaped by those who understand how to use them." Tom felt his head spinning. "And they taught you how to use these tools?" Ben Carter spoke for the first time. His young face was serious. "They didn't just teach us, Ambassador. They showed us that humans have a special role to play in the galaxy's future." "What kind of role?" Morrison stood up and walked to the window that looked out into space. "Tom, may I call you Tom? The Zephyrians and other advanced species have focused on dominating the universe through force and technology, but they've missed something important, which is, the universe doesn't want to be dominated. It wants to be understood. It wants to be part of a partnership between intelligent life and the forces of creation." Dr. Kane pulled out a small device that Tom had never seen before. It looked like a crystal, but it pulsed with inner light. "This is a reality modifier. With it, we can change the basic properties of matter and energy." She touched the crystal, and suddenly the air in the room shimmered. Tom watched in amazement as a perfect rose made of pure energy appeared floating above the table. The rose was beautiful beyond description, with petals that seemed to contain entire galaxies. "How?" Tom whispered. "The architects taught us that consciousness and reality are connected," Morrison explained. "When you truly understand something, you can change it. The Zephyrians have great technology, but they've never learned to work with the universe instead of against it." The door opened, and Science Minister Catherine entered with 2 Zephyrian guards. His crystal crown was glowing brightly, which Tom knew meant he was angry. "Enough games," Catherine said. "I demand that you share this technology with the Empire immediately." Morrison turned from the window. "Minister, we're happy to share knowledge with those who are ready to learn. But this isn't technology in the way you understand it." "What do you mean?" Dr. Kane made the energy rose disappear with a thought. "Minister, your people have spent thousands of years trying to force the universe to obey your will. You build bigger weapons, stronger shields, faster ships, but you've never tried to understand what the universe actually wants." Catherine's blue skin darkened with anger. "The universe is a collection of physical laws and random events. It doesn't want anything?" Ben Carter smiled. "That's exactly what the architects said you would think. Minister, would you like us to prove that you're wrong? How?" Carter closed his eyes and concentrated. Suddenly, every piece of technology in the room began to hum with energy. The lights grew brighter, the computers ran faster, and the life support systems worked more efficiently. "I'm not controlling your technology," Carter explained. "I'm asking it to work better, and it's agreeing to help." Catherine stared at his tricorder, which was showing readings he had never seen before. "This is impossible. Machines don't have consciousness." "Everything has consciousness at some level," Morrison said. "Atoms, molecules, energy fields, gravity itself. The architects taught us to communicate with these forms of consciousness, instead of just trying to control them. Tom watched the exchange with growing excitement. If humans had really learned to work with the universe, instead of against it, this could change everything. No more wars over resources. No more struggling to survive in hostile environments. Humanity could become partners with the forces of creation itself. But he could also see the fear in Catherine's eyes. The Zephyrian Empire was built on the idea that they were the most advanced species in the galaxy. If humans had suddenly surpassed them, what did that mean for their position of power? Minister, Tom said carefully, perhaps we could arrange for some of your scientists to work with Dr. Kane and learn these new principles. Absolutely not, Catherine snapped. This technology must be turned over to the Empire for proper study and control. Morrison sighed. Minister, you still don't understand. This isn't about technology or control. It's about evolution. The architects showed us that every species eventually reaches a choice point. They can continue trying to dominate the universe through force, or they can learn to work in harmony with it. And what happens to species that choose domination? Dr. Kane's expression grew sad. They destroy themselves. Always. The universe is patient, but it won't tolerate aggressive ignorance forever. Kethron stepped back, his crystal crown flickering with confused patterns. You're threatening the Empire. No, Morrison said gently. We're offering the Empire a chance to evolve, but that choice has to be made freely. We can't force anyone to grow. The science minister looked around the room at the humans who had somehow learned to bend reality to their will. Tom could see the conflict in his eyes. Part of him wanted to learn these new principles, but another part was terrified of losing the power and status that came with being part of the dominant species. I need to report to High Archon, Veltar, Catherine said finally. Of course, Morrison replied. But Minister, I hope you'll think carefully about what you tell him. The architects made it clear that this is a crucial time for all species in the galaxy. The choices made in the next few years will determine the future for millions of generations. After Kethron left with his guards, Tom sat alone with the three humans who had returned from beyond the edge of space. He had 1,000 questions, but one seemed most important. What do you need from human leadership? Morrison smiled that knowing smile again. Time, mostly, and permission to share what we've learned with our people. Humanity is ready for this. Next step, Tom. We've always been explorers and dreamers. Now we can become something more, Dr. Kane added. But we also need to be careful. There are species in this galaxy who won't want to see humans evolve beyond their current level. Some of them might try to stop us. Tom nodded. He was already thinking about the political challenges ahead. How do you convince an entire galaxy that the primitive humans had suddenly become the most advanced species in known space? The answer, he realized, would require very careful demonstration. Admiral Rex Morgan stood on the bridge of the human flagship Liberty and watched the largest fleet in Zephyrian history surround his small group of ships. Rex was Jake Morrison's old friend from the academy, and he had come as soon as he heard about the Horizon's return. Rex was 58 years old, with white hair and scars from a dozen battles. He had spent his entire career trying to keep humanity safe in a galaxy full of more powerful species. Now he found himself facing a situation he had never imagined. 200 Zephyrian warships hung in space around the small human fleet. Each alien vessel was 3 times larger than the biggest human ship, armed with weapons that could destroy entire planets. At the center of this massive force was the Zephyrian dreadnought Eternal Glory, commanded by War Commander Admiral, called Lieutenant Sarah Kim, from the communications station. We're receiving a transmission from the Zephyrian flagship. Put it through. The main screen flickered, and Rex found himself looking at War Commander Zaktar. The Zephyr was massive, even by his species standards, with battle scars covering his blue skin and a crystal crown that marked him as a veteran of 100 wars. Human Admiral Zektar's voice was deep and threatening. "You will surrender the vessel," called Horizon and all its crew immediately. Rex kept his voice calm. "War Commander, the Horizon is a human ship with a human crew. We have no intention of surrendering them to anyone. Then you have chosen war." The transmission ended, leaving Rex staring at the overwhelming force arrayed against him. His fleet consisted of 12 ships, with maybe 1,000 crew members total. The Zephyrians had brought enough firepower to destroy every human world in the galaxy. "Sir," came a voice from behind him. Rex turned to see Jake Morrison walking onto the bridge of the Liberty. His old friend looked exactly the same as he had 43 years ago, but there was something different in his eyes. "Jake," Rex said, embracing his friend, "you've caused quite a stir." Morrison smiled. "Rex, I need you to trust me. What's about to happen is going to seem impossible, but it's necessary." "What are you talking about?" Before Morrison could answer, alarm klaxons began sounding throughout the ship. On the main screen, the Zephyrian fleet was moving into attack formation. "Sir," Lieutenant Kim called out, "all Zephyrian ships are charging weapons. They're preparing to fire." Rex looked at his friend. "Jake, I've got 12 ships against 200. Whatever you learned out there, I hope it's enough." Morrison walked to the center of the bridge. "Rex, I need you to order all human ships to power down their weapons and shields." "What? Are you crazy?" "Trust me." Rex stared at his oldest friend. Everything in his military training told him that powering down defenses in the face of an enemy attack was suicide. But something in Morrison's calm confidence made him believe. "All ships," Rex said into his communicator, "power down weapons and shields. All hands, prepare for." "I don't know what we're preparing for." On the screen, they could see the first wave of Zephyrian energy blasts racing toward the human fleet. Enough firepower to turn their ships into vapor was crossing the space between them. Morrison closed his eyes and concentrated. The energy blasts hit the human ships and passed right through them like they weren't there. The deadly beams continued on into empty space, harming nothing. The bridge of the Liberty was completely silent. Rex's crew stared at their instruments in disbelief. According to every sensor, the ships had been hit by enough energy to destroy a small moon, but they were completely unharmed. "How?" Rex whispered. Morrison opened his eyes. "The architects taught us that matter is just energy, organized in a particular way. If you change the organization, you can change what happens to the matter." On the main screen, they could see the Zephyrian fleet in chaos. War Commander Zektar was probably screaming orders, trying to understand how his perfect attack had failed. "Completely." "Jake," Rex said, "you need to show me everything." Morrison nodded toward the navigation station. "Ben, would you like to demonstrate our new capabilities?" Lieutenant Ben Carter, who had somehow appeared on the bridge without anyone noticing, walked to the navigation controls. "Admiral Morgan, we're going to show the Zephyrians what cooperation with the universe looks like." Carter placed his hands on the navigation panel and closed his eyes. Suddenly, the USS Horizon appeared next to the Liberty, even though Rex knew it had been docked at the station light minutes away. "Teleportation?" Rex asked. "Not exactly," Morrison explained. "We asked space to bring us here, and it agreed to help." The Zephyrian fleet opened fire again, this time with every weapon they had. The space around the human ships lit up with enough energy to boil away an ocean. But again, the beams passed harmlessly through the human vessels. "Sir," Lieutenant Kim said in a shaky voice, "I'm reading some kind of transmission from the Horizon. Put it through to the Zephyrian fleet." Morris' voice echoed across space, reaching every ship in both fleets. "War Commander Zektar, we don't wish to fight you, but we want to show you what we've learned." The human ships began to glow with soft, warm light, but they weren't using their engines or any technology that Rex recognized. Somehow, they were drawing energy directly from space itself. "Watch," Morrison said softly. The horizon moved toward the Zephyrian fleet, but not like a normal ship. It flowed through space like water, changing direction instantly without any visible thrust. As it moved, something incredible happened. Several Zephyrian ships had been damaged in previous battles, their hulls scarred with blast marks, and their systems running at reduced efficiency. As the horizon passed near them, the damage simply disappeared. Hull plates reformed themselves, systems came back online, and the ships became better than new. Rex watched his instruments in amazement. The horizon wasn't using any kind of repair beam or technology. It was simply asking the damaged ships to heal themselves, and they were responding. My God, Rex breathed. But the demonstration wasn't over. The horizon moved to a section of space, where a small asteroid drifted between the fleets. Carter concentrated, and the asteroid began to glow. Before anyone could react, the rock transformed into a beautiful garden floating in space, complete with trees, flowers, and a breathable atmosphere. Dr. Lisa Kane's voice came over the communications system. War Commander Zektar, this garden will survive in space indefinitely. It will provide food and oxygen for any travelers who need it. Consider it a gift from humanity to the galaxy. The Zephyrian fleet had stopped firing. Rex could imagine the confusion and fear on their bridges as they tried to understand technology that operated beyond their comprehension. But the most impressive demonstration was yet to come. Chief Engineer Sam Torres, another member of the Horizon crew, appeared on the bridge of the Liberty. Admiral Morgan, Torres said, there's a dying star in this system, isn't there? Rex checked his astronomical charts. Yes, the red giant about 2 light-years from here. It's been slowly cooling for millions of years. Torres smiled. Would you like to see it restored? Before Rex could answer, Torres closed his eyes and reached out with his consciousness toward the distant star. Rex watched on his long-range sensors as the dying sun suddenly flared back to brilliant life. The red giant transformed into a young, healthy star that would burn for billions more years. You can restore stars? Rex asked in wonder. We can ask them to remember what it was like to be young, Morrison explained. Most of the time, they're happy to help. The space around both fleets was filled with new light from the restored star. The Zephyrian ships were completely motionless, their crews probably too shocked to function. Finally, War Commander Zektar's voice came over the communications system. For the first time, the arrogant Zephyrian warrior sounded uncertain. What are you? Morrison's reply was gentle. We're what humanity is becoming, War Commander. We're what any species can become if they choose cooperation over domination. Rex looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They were staring at their instruments and screens with expressions of awe and wonder. In the span of a few minutes, everything they thought they knew about the universe had changed. Jake, Rex said quietly, what happens now? Morrison walked to the window and looked out at the Zephyrian fleet. Many of the alien ships were beginning to move away, their commanders probably reporting back to their superiors that they had encountered something beyond their understanding. Now, Morrison said, we give everyone a choice. They can continue trying to control the universe through force, or they can learn to work with it. But the choice has to be theirs. As Rex watched, more and more Zephyrian ships were jumping to hyperspace, carrying news of humanity's transformation to every corner of the galaxy. He realized that nothing would ever be the same again. The age of human submission was over. The age of cooperation with the universe itself had begun. President Claire Davis stood in the council chamber on Earth, looking out at representatives from a dozen different species. 6 months had passed since the demonstration at the Zephyrian border, and the galaxy was still trying to understand what had happened. Claire was a tall woman with silver hair and sharp blue eyes. She had been elected president of the Human Coalition just 2 years earlier, and she had never expected to deal with anything like this. When she took office, humanity was still considered a minor species. Now, Alien ambassadors came to Earth seeking wisdom and partnership. The council chamber buzzed with quiet conversations in dozens of languages. Zephyrians sat next to humans, while representatives from the insect-like hive worlds talked with delegates from the gas giant colonies. For the first time in galactic history, species were coming together as equals instead of trying to dominate each other. "President Davis," said a familiar voice behind her. Claire turned to see Jake Morrison walking into the chamber. He still looked exactly as he had when he disappeared 43 years ago, but his presence seemed to fill the room with calm energy. "Commander Morrison," Claire said, shaking his hand. "Are you ready for this?" Jake smiled. "As ready as anyone can be for changing the course of galactic civilization." They walked to the center of the chamber, where a simple podium waited. As Jake approached, the conversations died down and all eyes turned toward him. Claire could see fear, hope, and curiosity on the faces of the assembled delegates. "Friends," Jake began, his voice carrying easily through the large chamber, "6 months ago, my crew and I returned from a place beyond normal space and time. We brought back knowledge that has challenged everything we thought we knew about the universe." An elderly Zephyrian named Elder Xanthera raised her hand. Claire knew her story. Xanthera was one of the oldest living beings in the galaxy, and she had watched the rise and fall of dozens of civilizations. "Commander Morrison," Xanthera said in her ancient voice, "many of my people are afraid. For thousands of years, we believed we were the most advanced species in the galaxy. Now we discover that humans have surpassed us overnight. Some of my people want to fight. Others want to surrender. What should we tell them?" Jake walked closer to the elderly alien. "Elder Xanthera, the architects told us something important. They said that every species eventually reaches a point where they must choose their path forward. Some choose to keep fighting for dominance. Others choose to work together with the universe itself. And what happens to those who choose to keep fighting?" Dr. Lisa Kane, who had been sitting quietly in the front row, stood up. "They destroy themselves, Elder. Every time. The universe is patient, but it won't support aggressive civilizations forever." A young Zephyrian named Lyrith jumped to his feet. Claire had heard about him. He was leading a movement of young Zephyrians who wanted to learn the new ways that humanity had discovered. "Dr. Kane," Lyrith said excitedly, "some of our scientists have been trying to understand your equations. We want to learn how to work with the universe instead of against it. Will you teach us?" Lisa smiled. "Of course. But you need to understand that this isn't just about technology. It's about changing how you think about everything." High Archon Veltar, the supreme leader of the Zephyrian Empire, had been sitting silently in the back of the chamber. Now he stood up slowly, his crystal crown dimmed with age and weariness. "Commander Morrison," Veltar said, "my empire has ruled this part of the galaxy for 3,000 years. We built our power on the belief that strength comes from controlling others. If you are right, then everything we have built is wrong." Jake nodded sympathetically. "High Archon, the architects showed us the ruins of hundreds of civilizations that thought the same way. They all believed that power came from domination, and they all eventually destroyed themselves. So what do you propose? That we simply give up our power and let chaos rule the galaxy?" Dr. Pete Young, a human philosopher who had been studying the implications of the architect's knowledge, stood up from his seat. "High Archon, what if power came from cooperation instead of control? What if strength meant working together with other species instead of ruling over them?" Veltar looked around the chamber at the mixed group of species sitting together. "You think such cooperation is possible? It's already happening," said a new voice from the back of the room. Everyone turned to see a group of young beings entering the chamber. They were children and teenagers from a dozen different species, all walking together like old friends. Leading the group was a human girl named Emma Harris, maybe 14 years old. Behind her walked a young Zephyrian, several insect-like beings from the hive worlds, and others that Claire didn't immediately recognize. President Davis, Emma said confidently, we're the first class of the Universal Academy that Dr. Kane and Commander Morrison started. We've been learning how to work with the universe together, and it's amazing what we can do when we combine our different ways of thinking. The young Zephyrian stepped forward. My name is Kylerin. 3 months ago, I thought humans were primitive. Now Emma is teaching me how to talk to stars. Emma laughed. And Kylerin is teaching me how to see energy patterns that I never knew existed. When we work together, we can do things that neither of our species could do alone. Claire watched as the adult delegate stared at the group of young beings. She could see something changing in their expressions. The fear and suspicion were being replaced by wonder and hope. Jake walked over to the group of students. Would you like to show our guests what you've learned? The young beings looked at each other and smiled. Then they joined hands in a circle, their different species united in purpose. Claire watched in amazement as the air above them began to shimmer and change. Slowly, a three-dimensional image formed in the center of the chamber. It showed the galaxy as it really was, not as a collection of territories controlled by different empires, but as a living system where every star, planet, and species was connected to every other. This is what the universe actually looks like, Emma explained, when you stop thinking about it as something to control and start seeing it as something to be part of. The image zoomed in to show solar systems where different species worked together to create beautiful gardens among the stars. Planets where humans and Zephyrians and others shared knowledge and resources. Space stations where beings from dozens of worlds collaborated on projects that benefited everyone. This could be our future, Kylerin added, if we choose cooperation over competition. High Archon Veltar stared at the image for a long time. Finally, he spoke in a quiet voice. How do we begin? Jake stepped forward, the same way these young people did, by choosing to see other species as partners instead of threats, by sharing knowledge instead of hoarding it, by working with the universe instead of against it. Elder Zenthera stood up slowly, her ancient bones creaking. Commander Morrison, I have lived for over 2,000 years. I have seen empires rise and fall, species evolve and go extinct, but I have never seen anything like what you are proposing. Elder, the architects told us that this moment would come. They said that every galaxy eventually reaches a point where its species must choose between cooperation and destruction. Our galaxy has reached that point. The elderly Zephyrian looked around the chamber at the mixed group of beings. And you believe we can choose cooperation? Jake gestured toward the young students, who were still maintaining their beautiful image of a cooperative galaxy. They already have. Over the next several hours, delegates from dozens of species stood up to speak. Some were afraid of the changes that cooperation would bring. Others were excited about the possibilities. But all of them were beginning to understand that the old ways of thinking were no longer enough. As the session came to an end, President Davis stood up to address the gathering. Friends, she said, we can't force anyone to choose cooperation. That choice has to come from within each species, each individual. But humanity is ready to share what we've learned with anyone who wants to grow. Jake added, the architects told us one more thing. They said that in a few thousand years, when our species have learned to work together, we'll be ready to take the next step in evolution. We'll become something new, something that can help other galaxies make the same choice we're making today. As the delegates began to file out of the chamber, Claire noticed that many species who had been enemies for centuries were walking together, talking quietly about possibilities for cooperation. The young students were the last to leave. As they walked past Jake, Emma Harris stopped and looked up at him. Commander Morrison, she said, the architects weren't really aliens, were they? Jake smiled and put his hand on her shoulder. What do you think, Emma? The young girl grinned. I think they were us. From the future. Coming back to make sure we made the right choice. And what choice is that? To grow up, Emma said simply. To stop fighting and start working together. As the chamber emptied, Jake stood alone, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, in the vast expanse of space and time, the architects were watching. They had given humanity and all the species of the galaxy a chance to evolve beyond their current limitations. The choice had been made. Now came the real work of building a galaxy based on cooperation instead of conquest, on wisdom instead of warfare, on love instead of fear. Jake smiled as he felt the presence of the architects in his mind, proud of what their younger selves had accomplished. The future was bright, with infinite possibilities, and for the first time in galactic history, all species would face that future together.